Today on Sugar Spun Run, I'll be showing you how to make homemade oatmeal cream pies. Hey Sugar Spun Bakers, Sam here, and today I am so excited to be sharing another carefully tested, well-researched, and perfected recipe. This recipe took me years and so many attempts to finally perfect, but I am so happy to be sharing a nice, soft oatmeal cream pie with perfect, chewy oatmeal cookies and an authentic marshmallow cream filling. Let's go ahead and preheat our ovens to 350 degrees Fahrenheit and we can get started. Now the first thing that you need for today's recipe is 1 cup of unsalted butter, and you want to go ahead and melt this. Now I have mine melted in a large mixing bowl here, and I want to note that it is so important that your butter not be even warm to the touch before we go any further. If your butter's still hot or even a little bit too warm, what you're gonna end up doing is you will melt your sugars and you're gonna end up with a greasy cookie dough and cookies that just spread all over your pan. Now mine feels completely cool to the touch, so I'm going to go ahead and proceed by adding 1 cup of dark brown sugar. This is firmly packed. 1/2 cup of granulated sugar, and 2 tablespoons of unsulphured molasses. This is not only going to help make the cookies nice and chewy and soft, it also gives them that distinct flavor that you get from a store-bought oatmeal cream pie. Now we'll just stir these ingredients together until they are well combined, and I really don't ever use an electric mixer for this recipe. One of the nice things is that this part at least can be done by hand. Next we'll stir in 2 large eggs and 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract. All right, now set this aside, and in a separate bowl, we're going to combine our dry ingredients, starting with 2 cups of all-purpose flour. We're going to add 2 teaspoons of cornstarch, 1 1/4 teaspoons of baking soda, 3/4 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, which is also key for that perfect flavor, and 3/4 teaspoon of salt. Now we'll just stir these together, whisk them together. We'll add our dry ingredients to our wet ingredients and stir until everything is well combined. All right, now of course we need the oatmeal for our oatmeal cream pies. We are going to be using 2 cups of instant oats, and we will stir these in until they are completely combined. Now the nice thing about today's recipe is if you started with butter that was not too warm, you should be able to bake these right away without any chilling needed. Now I'm just going to be dropping the dough by a level 1 tablespoon scoop right onto a parchment paper lined baking sheet. These cookies are going to spread, so we're going to give them at least 2 inches between the cookie dough. And for nice round cookies, you want to make sure you really do use a level scoop and then just drop that straight down on the baking sheet. All right, we'll take these over to our preheated oven where they're going to need to bake for just about 9 to 10 minutes or until they're a nice golden brown color. Now these look perfect, so we're going to set them aside and let them cool completely before we fill them with our marshmallow cream filling. While they're cooling, let's go ahead and make that filling. Now I wanted to use an authentic marshmallow cream filling, and I did not want to resort to using store-bought marshmallow fluff, so we're going to be making our own. Now, before we jump in, you are going to need a double boiler for today's recipe. I do not use a professional or official double boiler like you can buy. What I do is I like to prepare my sugar syrup, which is the base for our marshmallow cream pie, right in the bowl of my stand mixer. Now I'm going to be using my stand mixer in order to whip this cream, which is going to take some time, so it's really nice to be able to do everything in this bowl, and then I can just pop it over to my stand mixer. So I'm going to need a pot that will hold my bowl without the bottom of the bowl touching the pan. And in this pot, I have about 1.5 to 2 inches of water, and I want to make sure that the bottom of this bowl does not touch the water either. So this is our makeshift double boiler. Now, another thing I want to note before we begin, it's so important that this bowl be completely clean, dry, and grease-free. Otherwise, your cream is not going to whip to stiff peaks, and the whole thing's just going to be a mess. Now, in our mixing bowl, we're going to combine 6 large egg whites. So I just like to crack these, pass the yolk back and forth until the white falls out, and then I'll just pour the egg white into my clean, dry mixing bowl. And you can either discard the yolks or you can save them for one of my other recipes that I'll link to that uses just egg yolks. Now you want to take care that you do not get even a tiny, tiny bit of egg yolk in with egg whites, or again, your mixture is not going to whip properly. All right, so I have my egg whites, so now I'm going to add 1.5 cups of granulated sugar, 1/2 teaspoon of cream of tartar, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and we are just going to whisk everything together. And you want to make sure it's nicely combined. Now bring that water that's in your saucepan to a simmer and we are going to place our egg white mixture right on top of that simmering water. Now at this point, we are going to whisk pretty much constantly. And what we're going for is we want all of the sugar that's in our mixture to dissolve completely, and we want this mixture to reach a temperature of at least 160 degrees Fahrenheit because we want the egg whites to be safe to consume. Now to test if all the sugar's been dissolved, what I like to do is just take a tiny bit of it between my thumb and finger. And what I'm doing is I'm just feeling to make sure that there's no grit. This feels nice and smooth, so I know the sugar's been completely dissolved. Just be careful with this step because your sugar syrup's going to be hot. Then I just like to use an instant read thermometer, and I want to make sure we're at least at 160 degrees. This is perfect, so I'm going to take it out of the double boiler. The bottom is going to be wet and it's going to be very hot, so be careful and use a towel to catch any water. And we're going to pop this right on to our stand mixer, which I have fitted with a whisk attachment. All right, now we're just going to gradually turn up the speed on our mixer until we have a high speed, and we are just going to beat this marshmallow fluff until it has thick, stiff peaks. Now I want to stop at a couple points here because I want to show you what stiff peaks do not look like. So at this point you can see the peak that forms when I lift this out of the mixture. It droops, it falls back over itself, it dissolves. We're not even close to stiff peaks at this point, so we're going to keep mixing. All right, now this is looking much better. This is what I'm looking for here. The peak that forms is totally stiff. It's not bending, it's not folding over itself, it's not dissolving. This is completely stiff, very sticky, very thick. This is the perfect marshmallow cream. You need to make sure you get your cream to this point, otherwise it's just going to kind of melt right out of your oatmeal cream pies. Now we're not quite done yet. Real quickly, we're going to add 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract, which is going to give this a nice vanilla marshmallow flavor. And we'll just stir this in until the vanilla is combined. Okay, all that's left now is the assembly. So I have my marshmallow cream and I have my cookies. So I'm just going to scoop out a generous portion of this filling. I'd say I'm using about between 2 and 3 tablespoons. And you could pipe this with a piping bag if you want, but I just like to use a cookie scoop. We're gonna dollop that right on the bottom of one cookie, and we will top it with another cookie. And that is how you make perfect homemade oatmeal cream pies. This is one of my current favorite desserts. I cannot wait for you guys to try this one. And if you do, please leave me a comment and let me know what you think, because I always love hearing from you. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time. These are so good.